Let me go back and rewind this video and take a look at what we see. And I'm going to stop it here as the airplane comes into the frame. The airplane looks to be kind of normal, but what we do know is this: the landing gear is still down. Now, this airplane is well beyond the point of rotation and climb out where they would have raised the gear. That's done at about 50 feet off the ground. And so more on that in a minute. What we also see is both engines. We don't know if they're producing thrust, but what we don't see out of the engines is any sort of flame, any sort of sparks. We don't see any indication that they're not operating normally. Now, to be specific with this, this was a loss of lift. It could have been caused by a power loss. So that's theory number one, is that they lost power on both engines. That caused the loss of lift. The airplane stopped flying. It started flying at one point. It was flying normally as the nose lifted off. Before they raised the gear, the airplane lost lift and stopped flying. So what would have caused that? Well, if both engines failed, it was just one of two things. Either they ran through a flock of birds and basically destroyed both engines at once. The reason I don't think that's a likely theory is we don't see any birds in the picture. It would have had to be a lot of birds to follow out both engines. And we don't see any indications coming out of the back of the engine that happened. You'd see flames, you'd see sparks, you'd see something as those engines were kind of coming apart. It's smoke at a minimum. So you don't see any of that stuff. It looks as though the engines are intact and they're running. They could have both flamed out because of fuel contamination. That's the one thing that both engines would have in common, is the fuel. The problem with that theory, at least in my opinion, is that as they pushed up the power to go down the runway, they would have had the indications of a sputtering engine if the fuel had been contaminated. There's no indication that they did. They roll down the runway, and I'll show you that video in a minute. They rotate at the normal speed. They take a nose up attitude, which is really normal for that airplane at that speed. Everything else happens after that. So I don't think they lost power on the engines. Now, we could find out in a day or two. That's exactly what happened. And that's what caused the loss of lift. But that's theory number one. Here's what I think happened. And let's take a look now at this other video. I want to show you the closed caption video of the airplane on the takeoff roll. I'm going to run the whole thing. We're going to bring it back, and I'm going to show you in detail what I think happened. All right here, beyond that little shack that's in between us and the airplane, we see the airplane begin to lift up off of the runway. Everything up to this point looks completely normal. There's no fire or sparks or anything coming out of the engines. We can't tell from this distance whether those leading edge slats, those flaps in the front, are out or not. And we really can't tell whether those 5-degree flaps in the back are out. Let's assume for a minute they are. Because, why? Because the pilots would have had to overcome those flashing lights in their face and those deafening horns going off in the cockpit for some explained reason to keep on going. So they get to a normal rotate spot. They come up, and the airplane naturally comes up to about 2.5 degrees as the main mounts come up off the ground. That's when in the back of the airplane you feel like a slight nose up. And then at that point, the pilot, and let me run this a little bit farther. See that 2.5 degrees right there? That's 2.5 degrees. They're off the ground. Right at this point, the pilot not flying, let's call him the co-pilot for a minute. The co-pilot is going to say to the pilot flying, positive rate. That means that the main mounts are off the ground and the airplane is climbing normally. Once the co-pilot says positive rate, the pilot then at the controls says gear up. At that point, the other pilot reaches up, raises the landing gear, and gets those great